Okay, good afternoon. Here's a picture of Jersey City, the walking on the Hudson River, and Jersey City has become kind of New Jersey's Wall Street as companies have been moving over there. And that Wall Street means commerce and profits and accounting and getting results that are practical and selling people things and getting people to buy things, getting people to pay for what you give them. And that's kind of an important idea today in today's talk. And because the theme that I want to talk about today is, should I as a writer be expected to write what other people want, or should I write what I want to say? And I've, of course, over the last 20 years, 25 years, have done very much the latter. But back in 1998, I think, I remember when I was joining the National Writers Union in Minnesota and networking with them a little bit. There was a periodical that they put out that I remember. Oh, it was Writer's Digest. I remember that. It was Writer's Digest. I don't know if that was part of the National Writers Union or not, but at the time. But Writer's Digest said, write what other people want. The fact is, very few people care about your opinions about things. They write in order to satisfy their needs as consumers. And that was kind of a very important message. Now, that would be, you get hired to write for what other people say. And for example, I'm not very interested in being hired to promote woke opinions or promote the idea of identity through victimhood as part of an intersectional oppressed class or something. Because that's somebody I would feel kind of ashamed to do that, and maybe I have to get over that, but some people think I do. But I wanted to look at that question. The presumption when you write a book, the presumption is that you're going to sell copies of the book, or maybe instances of the book on Kindle or online, and but you're actually going to get paid, and you're going to make back what you put into publishing the book. And in fact, in my own case, that's kind of complicated, because back in 1997, the first printing was an actual physical printing of about 400 and some copies, and I did, between 1997 and 2000, that's a remaining copy of the original. Managed to sell most of them. I did have them go to a book distributor called the Bookman and everything. And then in 2000, when I ran out, I went to print on demand, and that's what I've done ever since with iUniverse. And so that's one of the reasons why I don't show high numbers for selling through print on demand, because most of my sales had been when I had a print run. And then particularly the first book, when Gays in the Military, in the late 90s, was actually a pretty interesting hot topic, and I got on a local TV station and so forth after I moved to Minneapolis in 1997, 1998. It was all pretty interesting, but that kind of died off, and I've not been able to sell heavily since then, particularly. One of the things, in fact, I would say is that if you use print on demand, you should probably go ahead and, even if you're if you're using it the first time for something that you already had a print run for, you should go ahead and buy the services then from your company and do some bookstore promotion and library promotions and so forth. It's a little bit expensive, but self-publishing is supposed to be it is supposed to be a business. And it is supposed to, something that can pay for itself, and it is supposed to be commercial. So that you do need to have some scale if you're going to be able to stay in it. There's kind of a problem um, that I have of course put all my books online on a website. Here's a statement on my personal site of what my personal view of this was. But I did put all my books online back in 1998 with sort of an honor system. So I got lots and lots of hits through search engines. That's something I've talked about before. Didn't necessarily sell a lot of copies, but I was very influential in a few issues, particularly gays in the military, and then later on some other issues like filial responsibility laws and so forth. One of the problems that, for example, is if Section 230 were to go away, it would be much more risky. It would be much riskier for platforms and even hosting companies to allow non-professional people to continue speaking on their platforms or facilities unless the people could their operations paid their own ways, and if they could afford to provide their own liability insurance, because if Section 230 were to go away. So that's something that's been on the back of my mind. Another topic, back in around 1999, 2000, the National Writers Union was able to get us some personal liability insurance, and then I had it for 6 months in 2001, and then in the summer it wasn't renewed because I was dealing with controversial topics. I was actually told that in a letter. It's something I covered in the second of my books. This one, When Liberty is Stressed. There's a chapter on self-publishing in that book, chapter 9, I think, and I talked about that. One of the ways, of course, to say what you want when you're publishing, it's kind of, and to make something that's sellable, it may be easier to do a lot of times with nonfiction. With fiction. With a novel that has a real story circle, has real fractal story circles, and with characters, and then the character, well, should it be autobiographical? Well, that doesn't work out too well. That seems kind of self-indulgent. Could it be somebody that's like you? In my case, somebody that's elderly and retired, and I've actually experimented with that. Or would it be better to pick somebody you admire, like these young YouTube creators that are barely in their 20s, and actually make your protagonist somebody like that, and make your protagonist a kind of Clark Kent, excuse me, a kind of Smallville, and develop a story around them, and maybe about a journalist, and have them uncover something you're interested in, like extraterrestrials or something. So I did want to mention that one style of nonfiction that has worked in the political area is, instead of writing personal accounts like this one, which tend to not sell real well, is to write lifestyle books or how-to books or handbooks. And excuse me. But in terms of LGBTQ or LGB, let's say, even, there's been a tendency in the past for those to sort of pander to identitarianism and to the idea that you're discriminated against because you're a member of a marginalized group, and to find identity in victimization. And that kind of stuff sells, unfortunately, in the market, but it's not what I believe. So that's what I've had to deal with. And so it is indeed a quandary. So this is just something I wanted to talk about today. I'll just go back and kind of underscore the theme I've been talking about. Again, those are my books, and that's just a bookcase in my closet. Actually moved it to the closet one time because it was too close to a window in a high-rise building. I thought it was safer if I moved it. But when you're a book author, you're expected to sell books like these. These are physical copies of books or possibly Kindles. You're expected to sell instances of your work and be able to account for it. And that's the way accounting is done. That's the way contracts are done. When you're converting a book to a movie, it's an issue how it's broken into books if there's more than one book. I'll also just mention my father, my own parents. My father was a salesman, but he sold wholesale, and so he sort of built his life back in the late 40s and in the 50s when I was growing up around some rather solid social capital through the First Baptist Church downtown in Washington, D.C. It was under Dr. Pruden, and through his membership in the Masons, and through keeping strong ties with relatives in Ohio and on my mother's side, and Iowa on my father's side. That was particularly the time I was graduating from high tried that summer when we tried to visit everybody before I went away to William and Mary. We all know what happened when I did, but that was a very interesting summer in 1961, even before I went to college. But that's what I wanted to talk about today is, again, should you write what you want, or should you write what other people want and what other people will pay for? And is that a serious issue? So that's just what I wanted to leave with you. I will talk more about what I've been spending on book promotion recently and why I've been spending so much recently in the last year on books that are old, and that's very unusual what I've been doing. But I will explain that later in more detail in a later video. And I do thank you very much for listening.